Monday, April 11th, and the Select Board meeting is being called to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 6, 2021 order extending certain provisions of the open meeting law, specifically Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and an extension to allow for remote participation until July 15th, 2022, this April 11, 2022 Select Board meeting will be conducted via remote participation by the board. We are given Westwood Media Center the right to record so that others will be able to review this at a later date. Under the Chairman's update, we have several things that we'd like to take care of. And first, we'd like to remind you that the annual town election will be on Tuesday, April 26th. It is now one polling location, which will be the gymnasium at the high school. You may recall on March 14th, the Select Board voted with the recommendation of our town clerk and the Board of Registrars to consolidate all voting locations into one location, specifically Westwood High School Gymnasium. What that does mean for registered voters is from now on, all registered voters, regardless of their precinct number, will cast their ballots at Westwood High School Gymnasium, located at 200 Nahanton Street. Voters should enter through door number 28, and you won't have to remember that. Someone will be there to direct you, which is located between the Westwood Rec Department and the Westwood Preschool entrance. When school is in session between 7:25 and 2:25, there will be designated parking in the rec and preschool parking lot. Because high school students have already designated parking spots in the high school lot, voters will not be able to access those numbered spots until after school is dismissed at 2:30. The gymnasium will be split into 5 precincts, and a greeter will send you in the direction to the appropriate precinct. A postcard was mailed to all registered voters, which included detailed information regarding these changes, and the information is also posted on the town website. Annual town meeting. Just several weeks away. The annual town meeting will be held on Monday, May 2nd, at Westwood High School. That will be at 200 Nahanton Street. The town meeting will be held indoors in the Westwood High School auditorium. All annual town meeting information will be posted on the town website. Check-in is at 5:30. 6 o'clock will be awards and recognitions, and 6:30, the business portion of the town meeting will begin. Westwood Word has a new and improved printed newsletter. The Westwood Word is the town's new and improved color print publication to be distributed 3 times a year. That's in April, September, and January. And the Westwood Word highlights events, happenings, and news within Westwood throughout the town and community submissions. So please be free to drop us any community submissions you may have. The Westwood Word will be mailed to residential homes. A printed version is replacing the current quarterly community newsletter. The diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, the town and school administration support. So I'm going to just read our statement that we had before into the record. That was approved by the Select Board and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in town. We, the members of the Select Board, wish to make a statement in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Westwood's town government, in the schools, and community as a whole. We believe the following to be true about this town, and we are so proud to serve. Westwood is part of a nation founded on the principles that all people are created equal, and that each person has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is up to all of us to move our community and country ever closer to these ideals for all people. One of the many strengths of our community is the fact that we are made up of individuals who are diverse in their ethnicities, their racial background, their spiritual and political beliefs, gender identities, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, physical and neurological abilities, and more. The town of Westwood strives to be, for all residents and community members, a safe place where one is free from discrimination and able to grow into the best and most authentic version of oneself, and where we are committed to continually learning and evolving through our connections to and mutual respect for each other and our community. The Select Board welcomes the support of various contributions of our diverse community, knowing that it is a source of the strength and character of our town. We wish to affirm our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in all facets of our policies and practices. We have received significant support and encouragement from residents, and with the creation of our Human Rights Task Force, comprised of volunteers who share the same commitment, Together with the Human Rights Task Force, we are providing this statement to the town. We look forward to hearing how we can continue to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in Westwood, and not only from the Westwood Human Rights Task Force going forward, but also from any residents who would like to share their thoughts, ideas, and perspective on ways we can continue to improve our town. This work begins with each individual community member. Through our collective action, we can make real our ideals. And we signed that back in May of this year. It was approved by the board, on December 20th of 2021, and we wish to reinforce that. We had all our school committee members and diversity inclusion principals, as well as the select board, recognize that statement. Now comes the sad news. Mr. Hickey is leaving us, in case you haven't learned already. So this, I believe, this could be.
We have a live audience for this.
I see that. Mr. Hickey, this could be his last meeting, although you never know, John. We could have to have something, an emergency between now and town meeting. But this is John's last meeting. And John has served for 6 years, from 2016 to 2022. He served as chair in 17 and 20. I think in 2016, John was first on the board, and we approved a home rule petition to appropriate funds to aid to the elderly and to allow our senior applicants to get some tax relief. I think John's biggest thing, and I'm pretty sure his family was all excited, when we got to do the uncoupling at the Islington Fire Station when that first came on, and John was his first time as chair. We also helped to bring a pilot agreement to the Brigham Women's Hospital down at University Avenue, as well as Citizens Bank. The town supported seniors through the creation of the Senior Property Tax Work-Off. In 2020, we had the first comprehensive plan in 10 years, and John was a good portion of that. And John, we thank you for your service as well. And John's been a great help during the 2021 ongoing COVID pandemic. We successfully made it through the annual town meeting outdoors, where we supported 22 warrant articles, including capital improvements and bridge funding for the elementary school project and zoning amendments to related medical issues. John, it's all that in just 6 years. Imagine if you stayed.
I know. Well, I think I look at this screen and I have really fond memories of every single person that I feel like I did such great things with, and I learned so much from. And I just, a little nostalgic as you're speaking, but I remember my first town meeting in 2016 after being sworn in, and Mr. Ahern was giving his goodbyes, and he wished that I would have as joyous a ride as he had had. And it may not have been as long, but it was definitely joyful, and I learned a lot. And I will remind you all, I'm not going anywhere. But thank you all for everything. It's really been a pleasure to serve on the select board. I really appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, you may, Mr. Governor.
I'd like to thank John as well for your dedication of time, talent, and the energy that you put into helping keep Westwood the well-run community that's been. And while Chairman Walsh acknowledged the impressive list of things that you accomplished during your tenure, I'd like to extend that acknowledgement and congratulations to your family, Wendy, Caitlin, Sean, and Coleman, because public service has many unseen, unrecognized impacts on family. From the time that you dedicate to being away at meetings and events, there's certainly plenty of reading and preparation that goes into those, the hours of phone calls that go into everything, and not to mention campaigning twice. So John, thank you to you and your entire family for sharing all that time with the town.
Thanks, Rob. I think Wendy's really more excited than anybody tonight.
I get an extra
no doubt
driver
about
back.
that, but little does she know, John, I suspect at some point you'll be back.
Thank you all.
Excellent, thank you. And so just prior to the meeting, that's all we had on the agenda, but Mr. Coleman, I understand you have some important news that you wanted to share with everyone watching the meeting this evening.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Earlier today, we were notified that our Director of Facilities, James McCarthy, has been selected as the APWA Professional Manager of the Year for Facilities and Grounds. APWA is the American Public Works Association, and this is a national award. So we have always been very proud of Jimmy and what he's done for us and how he's made our jobs easier. And it's really nice to hear that his hard work is now being acknowledged at a national level. So the award will be provided to Jimmy at their national conference in August.
Excellent. That's great news. Jimmy's a great guy and he does fantastic work. We all depend on him for a lot of things in town that most people don't even realize. So that's a great award for Jimmy. Congratulations, Jimmy. And I'm sure we'll still continue to see him, even though he's, now he's at a level above. So.
He might have an entourage with him, but yes, we'll still see him.
Yes. Okay, so moving along to our scheduled action. The first thing we have this evening is a discussion on the annual town meeting, and we have our town clerk, Dottie Powers, joining us, as well as our moderator, Mr. James O'Sullivan, joining us this evening. So we have the legislature in February of 2022 this year. Governor Baker signed a bill supplementing certain fiscal 2022 appropriations in response to COVID-19, the public health emergency, and extending authorization related to public meetings, and specifically open town meeting quorums. So to give a little background, I think, Mr. Ahern, did you want to just weigh in as to what the statute was and what it provides for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, signed February 12th, 2022, allows the town, if it takes the proper steps in conjunction with the moderator, to consider reducing the quorum as low as 10% of what the current quorum is. Our current quorum is 175. This is not the first time we've considered this measure. A couple of years ago, in the first year of COVID, we were not fortunate enough to have this bill at the time. And at the direction of the select board, I went into Norfolk Superior Court and got an injunction that allowed us to reduce our quorum, but it also forced us to drop anything that was not a financial warrant article. Now we can consider all the warrant articles under this legislation. It requires us to have posted meeting notice at least 7 days in advance. We did it more than that, and again at 7 days. It requires us to meet and consult and allow the moderator to participate, and would again allow us to reduce the level to as low as 10%. The last time we reduced the quorum, we reduced it to just about 25% or 45 registered voters. Now, it's important to note that this is a floor, not a ceiling. There's nothing in what you're voting on tonight that prevents anyone from going to town meeting. It only ensures that if we don't get enough, if we don't get a quorum, enough of a quorum, we can get the work of town government done, which, if you understand how town government works, we generally have one town meeting, sometimes a second town meeting in a year, to do all the things that are required by law for us to take to town meeting. So I believe that would be your purpose if you decide to reduce the quorum, is to make sure that you can get the town meeting started, and that you can continue it if people walk out during the town meeting. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that you or anyone else may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ahern. Mr. O'Sullivan, thank you for joining us, and I'd like to have you weigh in if you'd like. I know you spent the time to come join us, so I'm open to your thoughts as well.
Okay, I'm glad to, Mr. Chair, but before I do, I just want to divert a little bit. I also would like to thank Mr. Hickey and his family for all he has done for the town. Excuse me, I'm not going to congratulate him for stepping down, but I will congratulate him on earning this free time that he's going to have now. And also extend congratulations to Jimmy McCarthy. He's been a great help at my town meetings. I guess my opinion is only anecdotal, but the O'Sullivan family got hit with COVID earlier this month. My sister got hit with it a second time, and a very dear friend I learned over the weekend, he contracted it for a second time over the weekend. So I think you really should consider reducing the quorum, at least for this town meeting. Maybe not lower than what we did back in 2020, but I think in order to get this town meeting done, you ought to consider reducing it, and I'm in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. John or Rob, did you have any discussion you'd like to say?
Yeah, when this first came up, I mean, I am supportive of it. I think what concerns me is that the news on COVID fluctuates daily. And I don't want to be in a position where in a space where people are fearful to come out and they don't come out. And I think that we all need to appreciate that if we cannot get a quorum and we cannot conduct our business, there are genuine ramifications to our ongoing funding and to the operation of the town. It's not as simple as just setting another date. So I think that there's minimal risk in reducing it. We want people to come. And in the years that we have reduced the quorum, we get a large turnout. This is more of a safety net. We will continue to publicize people coming, and by all means, we want people to come. But I think we put the town at great risk in somewhat turbulent times to just say, we'll return to status quo. We're not in status quo times. So I do think we need to reduce it.
Thank you, John. Mr. Gotti?
Yeah, I would agree with John's statements as well as what Pat said. It's a floor, not a ceiling. It allows us to complete the business of the town should we start and have folks who don't stick through the entire meeting and leave after the budget is voted. So I'm in favor of it. And quite frankly, there's an easy solution to anyone who has concerns. Show up. We want people there. We want more engagement. We want more involvement. So this is just about getting the business done.
Thank you, Rob.
So,
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, Mr. Hearn.
the first time we reduced the quorum, we ended up with over 200 people at town meeting. So we got a quorum and managed to hold them for most of it. We're going inside for this one. And then again, like Mr. Hickey said, the numbers are starting to fluctuate a little bit. I think this provides a safety net that the town can get its business done in a safe and efficient manner.
Okay. And I will say, obviously when this first came out and we published it, there was concern. That Facebook lit up everywhere and people were, looking at it as trying to diminish the voice of the public, which is exactly not true. We hope we don't have to use this, Pat, Mr. Hearn, or anyone else. Right, Mr. O'Sullivan? We know that as the night wears on and the later the meeting gets, because it is open town meeting and the discussion continues, that people have a tendency to leave. And I remember a couple of years ago, someone tried to call for a quorum and we had like 3 articles left. And that didn't happen, but we were pretty close. And I think whoever was the moderator, I don't think it was you, Mr. O'Sullivan, just ignored the call for the quorum. But we would like to continue to do that accurately, I'm sure. So I think with that, John, I'll take a motion if you like.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I move that the board, in consultation with the town moderator, move to reduce the 2022 annual town meeting quorum from 175 registered voters to 45 registered voters, and for the town clerk to notify the Attorney General of the adjusted quorum requirement.
I will second that motion.
I'm going to announce this again. This is a floor, not the ceiling. So we encourage everyone to come, especially those who are raving on Facebook, to be at town meeting to participate in this. So, Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan, for joining us, and we hope that we don't need to use this, but it's a safety net for all of us to get the town business done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jim. Thank you for the kind words.
Okay. So now we have a request from Algonquin Gas. So they're going to do some temporary work, and they are looking for temporary workspace agreement while they work on 7 Downey Terrace, right down the street from me. And I understand that this has been done in the past. And we have someone from Algonquin Gas joining us this evening. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have 2 colleagues that are also joining me, Joe Cunningham and Bob Killian, who are with our right-of-way group. And the 3 of us, as well as some of the other members of the Algonquin team, have been working on this project for a couple of months. We do appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. I'll give you a quick overview and then obviously answer any questions that you may have. Algonquin has a meter station located on Downey Terrace. Downey Terrace is off of Downey Street. It's essentially at the just beyond the rotary as you come off of 128. Canton Street is just above the the area where the meter station is located. It's actually tucked in on a hill there. Across from the meter station is the golf course. And if you take the right turn on Downey Street, that will get you to Downey Terrace, and you go up and there's a gate there. Downey Terrace is a town-owned street, and similar to work that we did in 2015, we entered into an agreement at that time to acquire additional temporary workspace so that Algonquin could complete its work. Temporary workspace is exactly as it sounds. It provides an area for equipment or other materials to be placed to facilitate the work that's going to occur at the meter station. When we're done, this filter separator that's going to be added on to the existing meter station, everything will still be within the existing fence line. But to facilitate the construction itself, we need some temporary workspace. We provided a draft agreement to accomplish that. And as I had indicated to Mr. Coleman at the time, the company was prepared to make a payment to the town of $1,000 per month or $12,000 in total to cover the term of the agreement. A filter separator, we also provided a picture. It's not a particularly big facility, and I'm not sure if that was available to the board in its information packet. But the purpose of a filter separator is exactly as the name suggests. It separates out essentially liquids from the natural gas stream, and therefore, when we provide at the meter station the gas to National Grid, at that juncture, the liquids and things of that sort have been removed from the natural gas stream. So we're looking for the permission from the town to again utilize the same space we used in 2015 to facilitate the work. At this stage, we're anticipating starting construction the first week of July, right after the 4th of July weekend, and it should take us approximately 8 weeks to complete, and that includes restoration at the end of the work. The schedule is still a little bit in a state of flux, but right now it looks as if it will start shortly after the 4th of July and be done around the 25th or 22nd of August.
Now, first, we were able to we do have a copy of the diagram and a copy of a picture of the.
Good.
So we were able to get that, yes.
And Mr. Chair, I neglected to mention, we have had discussions with both of the landowners that live on Downey Terrace. Bob Killian has had discussions, as well as another one of our right-of-way folks, and the golf course. And no one has expressed any concerns with regard to the work that we're contemplating this summer. So we would continue to keep them in the loop as well.
Okay. So I noticed the agreement was for, $1,000 a month and it's $12,000 annually, but you don't anticipate it's going to take that long?
The work itself should take approximately 8 weeks, but the reason we seek and Ms. Healy had asked that question, the reason we seek a longer term is that when we're done, we restore the site that we used as temporary workspace, for example, back to the condition or better than it was when we first got there. And clearly, things can happen where, a big rainstorm comes after. In my backyard, I some years ago planted a fair amount of grass seed, and a major storm hit, and the grass seed washed out into the underneath the trees, and the grass never grew there in all the years afterwards. So sometimes you have to go back and do some TLC. It's also possible that a part could be delayed coming in, and so we may be ready to, we're moving forward and then have to disrupt the sequence because of a supply chain disruption. And as we all know, that's a little bit more frequent now. So that's why we don't try to match it exactly to what we anticipate the schedule to be. We look for some additional flexibility, and particularly for the ability to be able to come back in and do whatever additional restoration activities may or may not be required, after the work is done.
Okay. Thank you. John or Rob, any questions?
Chris, our staff, well, okay?
Yes, yeah.
I'm fine.
Excuse me.
And my only question was addressed when you talked about the residents on the street, so I'm good.
Yeah. And so you've done this several times. There were a couple of other streets when you went across the golf course and then down into Meditech. I remember that easement was granted at that point in time, temporary easement.
Correct. Correct. I've had the pleasure of being before the select board a number of times over the last dozen years or so.
I move that the board approve and sign the temporary workspace agreement with Algonquin Gas for the property located at 7 Downing Terrace and for the term of May 1st, 2022 through April 30th, 2023.
And I will second that motion.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you very much, John.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you, and Mr. Coleman and Ms. Healy for the assistance you gave in the run-up to this meeting. Thank you both. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've been notified, so I'll address it from Fran Fusco, who was asking no public comment on reducing the quorum. It was not a public hearing, it was just an announcement. Am I correct, Mr. Hearn?
It was mandated by statute that it had to be done publicly and that you had to announce where people could see it and or attend it, and I believe you met those requirements. If you want to ask for public comment, you can, but it's at your discretion.
Okay. Well, then I will give Ms. Fusco the opportunity since she wanted to reach out. So, did you want to type your question in, Ms. Fusco? And don't forget to type your address as well. Okay, seeing nothing yet. We can come back to it if she decides that she would like to have a comment on that. Moving along our agenda, we have an entertainment license modification for Casa Loca down at University Avenue. They've requested to add a live music option to their existing entertainment license on Cinco de Mayo, or May 5th, 2022, and every May 5th thereafter. The applicant's current entertainment license allows for one television and recorded music only from Monday to Sunday from 10 to 10. In celebration of Cinco de Mayo every year, it's a pretty big day for the restaurant, and they would like to propose to add acoustic music from 12 to 9 on May 5th that would enhance the dining experience for patrons. The musical group being proposed for May 5th is currently from the Berklee College of Music students, and there will be no electric guitars or drums. So, sounds like a great place to go on May 5th.
Okay, I move that the board vote to modify Casa Loco's entertainment license to include live music on its existing entertainment license. The language to be added to the license will read, live music permitted on May 5th annually from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. The live music will be acoustic in nature and not include drums. Also, for the electronic signatures of the select board clerk to be affixed to the modified entertainment license.
Just before I second that, town council question, are we allowed to bind future? Are we allowed to do this as an annual, as an approval annually ongoing?
I believe the request is only for this year. You can indicate your will. Is it for multiple years?
Yes.
The request is for multiple years, but it's tied to the license. So the license is only in effect through December 31st. So it's really, you're approving it for this year, but they're indicating that they're interested in applying for this year after year.
So you can't approve something on a license that's not yet issued.
Okay, so I'll amend the motion to reflect that the language change is solely for 2022.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay.
And so Nora, I guess the communication back though is that it's not that we're saying it can't happen in the future. It's just we were more comfortable doing it for this year. Does that make sense?
Yes, so on their license application at the end of December, when they submit another, they will again request May 5th.
Okay, so Ms. Fusco has responded. She is at 20 Pine Lane, and she says she's not in favor of lowering the quorum. If the select board is concerned about COVID affecting the quorum, conduct the meeting outdoors like last year. I appreciate your comments, Ms. Fusco, but the weather plays too much of a factor, and I can tell you that last year was not comfortable for anyone in May, and so we have decided to move it indoors. We did this earlier, and so we've made that decision to have it indoors. The legislature gave us the right to lower the quorum in case people do not stay for the entire town meeting and that business needs to be conducted. I don't know if Mr. Hickey or Mr. Gotti want to add to that, but I think that's.
No,
pretty
I think we've had a robust discussion.
Okay. Moving along, we have a request to extend temporary outdoor seating approvals. You may have heard about this in the news several times, so restaurants in Westwood are now looking for the same. Nora, did you want to be heard? I know you.
Sure. So, as many people know, in June of 2020, this board allowed 3 businesses. They opened it up to anyone, but 3 businesses took advantage of the opportunity to expand its seating to include outdoor areas. That's BB's Cafe, the Toast Office, and Kiara Bistro. The board, at the annual renewal of their licenses last December, allowed for the outdoor seating to go through April 1st of 2022, because that was the extent of time that was permitted by the governor's directives. On April 1st of this year, the governor signed an act that allowed for a further extension through April 1st, 2023. So we're now asking this board to grant the same extension to those 3 businesses.
Okay.
Nora, if without the legislation, what could we have done?
We would have had to have their outdoor licenses expire on April 1st, and then they would have to apply to the board and go through a full approval process, which would require confirmation by ABCC. So this interim period of time, which has now been extended for another year, allows the board to bypass ABCC. So it's just a quick approval as opposed to a more lengthy process.
Rob, you good?
I am.
Okay, I move that the board extend the temporary seating approvals for Kiara Bistro, BB's Cafe, and the Toast Office until April 1st, 2023, per the act making appropriations for fiscal year 2022 as signed into law on April 1st, 2022.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. I did want to go back, thank you, before we move on the agenda. I did want to point out one other thing about town meeting. The cost is 3 times more to do it outdoors on Flayhigh Field than it is indoors because of the need for seating and the need for sound systems, which are readily available in the auditorium. So I did want to point that out. That's a very important consideration, is 3 times the cost to do it outdoors. And we've only done it outdoors as a necessary requirement to get things done for the town. So with that, let's move along. We have our school committee members and our superintendent joining us this evening. Good evening, Maya, and good evening, Emily. Thank you for joining us. So you're here because you'd like to submit a request for the Sheehan School, a statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Yes, apologies. I have a little bit of a cold, so I'm sounding a little hoarse. As you may recall, last year we came in front of you with this same request in order to submit a statement of interest to the MSBA. The MSBA requires a vote of both the school committee and of the select board or the governing body of a town. So we came to you last year with this request. We did receive your vote. And we went forward, submitted the request. And as you may recall, we found out in February that our application for Sheehan with the MSBA to enter their revitalization program was denied. Even still, we would like to submit again. You know, a lot of jurisdictions apply multiple years in a row before they get in. We are aware that with the Hanlon Deerfield project progressing and having not yet broke ground, we are in a bit of a tough situation. We're not so optimistic that we will be accepted into the program, but we really think we should try and go ahead anyway. The district, you know, led by Superintendent Parks, has kindly put together another statement of interest for this year. So at this point, we are here asking for your vote to move forward and submit this statement of interest once again to the MSBA.
Thank you. Emily, Ms. Parks, would you like to be heard since you came to join us this evening?
Thank you for the offer. I think Maya has sufficiently covered it. If we submit by the deadline of April 29th, we should hear back, we think in December of next year.
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, so keep submitting, and maybe at some point they'll break down and say, oh, just so we stop seeing the application.
Maybe they'll go away.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Do we have I don't see a proposed action. I move that the select board vote to approve the town's statement of interest to the Mass School Building Authority for the Sheehan School. Does that suffice? I ad-libbed.
Maybe to approve the submission of the statement of interest to the
Right.
MSBA.
So I
But you
move that-
know, I am wondering if there wasn't specific language that was included with that.
There is,
There
John.
is.
Proposed action, John.
Yeah, it's on page
It's
30.
30. It starts on 30. It's a long one, so
The MSBA usually has very precise.
we're not letting
Language
you out
for their
easy, John. We're not
motions.
letting you go easy. This one's a long one.
Oh, so it's like a resolution.
Correct.
Okay, sorry. May, could you not waited till the next meeting?
John, this is my last act of torture for you on the way out the door.
And
We have sons the same age, Mayor. Somehow I
I
don't
know.
think that's true.
Unfortunately,
Okay.
John, we could have done it next meeting, but it needs to be submitted by April 29th. So
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right, here we go. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on April 11th, 2022, prior to the statement of interest submission closing date, the Select Board of Westwood, Massachusetts, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent of schools to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated April 29th, 2022 for the Sheehan Elementary School located at 549 Pond Street, Westwood, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating and ventilation systems, to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility. In priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide a full range of programs consistent with state-approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
I'll second that motion.
Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you very much for joining us. Good luck.
Great. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys. We appreciate it. John, congratulations. You've been tremendously helpful to the schools, and we very much appreciate your service and the service of your family.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
Emily. See you
Bye-bye.
both.
Bye.
Okay, next on our agenda, we have the Westwood Community Choice Electricity Program. So we're going to be provided an update from the Westwood Community Choice Electricity, or Westwood CCE, and the next steps for launch of the program. So we have several members joining us.
Hi, yes, thank you for having us this evening. So my name is Juliana Belding, and Maria Constantini is also here representing, together we're representing the Community Electricity Aggregation Working Group, town appointed, and we are also members of WEAC. So again, as you've already said, we're here to share an update on the program and to kind of let you ask questions if you have them about some of the documents that the town will be sending out. So just a quick reminder of what CCE is, because it's been a little while. May 2019, at town meeting, a warrant was approved for Westwood to pursue the aggregation of electricity. And the goals of this program are to offer Westwood residents and businesses more supply options, and in particular to provide option to increase the percent of renewable local energy electricity that's coming into use. And so this is finally, so that was May 9th, 2019, and now we're coming to April 2022. And we have the preliminary Department of Public Utility approval, and we are awaiting final approval, and we hope that that will happen sometime in the span of May to July, at which point we'll be ready to launch this program. So this is really exciting for the town to meet sustainability goals and to provide more supply options electricity wise. So there's a few things I'm just going to briefly share. They've been provided ahead, and the goal of sharing them is to just kind of see if there are any questions that you have in the immediate that we can respond to. And then if there's any further questions, of course, you should reach out to us. So the town will be sending a bunch of documents, as this is a town-sponsored program. And if it's okay to share screen, I'd like to do that briefly. Are there any questions right now that are coming to mind?
I don't have any. I've been involved since it came on board, so I fully understand what's happening at this point.
Yep, the packet was quite informative, and the
Okay.
information that's going out to the town, I think, will be very, very helpful in explaining it.
Okay, so let me just walk through really quickly. So the first thing that will be going out will be the postcard that announces the program and tells our residents that they can expect a letter with details, as well as advertising virtual meetings to learn about the program, and the website that will be linked to the town website. The next thing that will happen is that letter that will go out to the consumers, to the residents, informing them of their options, including the basic option, the option to opt up to 10% more renewable energy for a total of 30% renewable energy, including what we already are required by law. So, and then also a 50% more, and then the 100%. And so along with this letter will also be an opt-out postcard. If people do not submit that opt-out postcard, they will be automatically enrolled in the default, and then they can opt up by going to the website and choosing the plus 50 or 100%.
And Julianne, just for
yes,
the
please,
public's
yes.
just for the public's benefit, the basic is the state mandated 20%. So even if you choose the
Yes.
basic, it's 20%, and then you're going up from there.
Right, and I think so we also are, this is just from our video script, so we'll be producing a short video for the public. And again, this is kind of a nice graphic. So 20% is what's required, and then the Westwood standard actually is the one that's 10% more. The Westwood basic is the 20% that's already required by law, like you said. And then there's also this is from Milton, but it would be a similar press release, obviously with our town seal, about this as well. And then together with Melinda Garfield at the Westwood Media Center, we've drafted a script, also with the input of Good Energy. And this is what we're hoping to produce within the next months or so that it'll be ready for the launch of the program. So that will be another way for people to get a short introduction to the why and the what of the program. So yeah, if there's any questions, we'd be happy.
I think the video will be very helpful. I think we've been kind of in the business of this for a while, so we understand it. But it's a great program. I think the video will be incredibly helpful.
I guess my only question would be any idea when the Good Energy is planning a public meeting to explain the program? I know as the weather gets warmer, we have less and less people hanging around town. I'm just hoping either before school is out or after school is back in session.
Well, we do have Stefano Loretto here from Good Energy, so I'll let him field that.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Mr. Chairman, so we're not going to have a public hearing until we've signed a contract, until the town has entered into agreement, because that's really going to be the point at which we start letting people what they're going to expect. And the first question is always, well, what's the rate? And how does it compare to the Eversource rate? So until we have a bid, we wouldn't go down that path. We are all painfully aware of where the energy markets are right now. And we're not going to advise launching this program unless the rate we're able to get from the supplier is below the Eversource rate. So The next step is to wait until the third week in May, and that is when Eversource will release its rates that take effect July 1st. So the first safe moment won't be until we know that rate towards the end of May. And if that rate is something that we don't feel confident about being able to get below with the aggregation, we'll just be in a waiting pattern. It's just this market is created real turbulence for launching these programs right now. So, but to answer your question, we would wait until there's an executed contract and have some tangible numbers before having a public meeting.
Okay. So it's not happening in the next month or so because we don't even have any bids yet.
Yeah, the hope was to, we're all, again, aware of the high rates we're all enduring this winter as residents up in the high 15-cent range. But the energy markets are so high that we've missed, there's no opportunity to beat that at this current time because of the opt-out process. So the first safe moment would be to launch starting in August, once we know the rates in May. So we will keep you updated of that, of that timeline as it gets pushed back. And then once we know the rates in May, we'll have a good idea as to if we think we can get suppliers that can come in under them. The utility has a bit of an advantage in that their procurements are done over a 12-month period. And so the procurement they did 12 months ago was a lot lower than the current market. We have to go to market entirely in this higher market, which is specifically the challenge we're facing. But rest assured, we're not going to launch unless we're able to provide economic value.
Okay, great. Thank you. Rob, John, anything else?
No, this is great. Thank you all for the information.
Okay, thank you. There's no action required on our part, only for feedback, and I think you have our good graces at heart.
Based on timeline that I just heard, if you are looking to launch in August, I think Chairman Walsh gave you some really good counsel. I'd hold till September at that point.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
We'll note that. Thank you.
Okay. There is still one statement in the questions regarding the DEI statement from a Brian Kameneker, who is the chairman of the Westwood Republican Town Committee. And he asks, has the select board read the statement by One Westwood regarding the DEI agenda in our town? He says, it represents the feeling of a large number of people here. If you haven't read it, you need to. There is a belief that the select board is catering to a vocal group of radical people. So I'm just reading that for the record. If anyone would like to make any comments to that, I would say that I think I personally disagree with that. I don't see how we're catering to anyone to include people as opposed to keeping them out or not including them. And I think that I would disagree with Brian's statement, but he is entitled to his opinion. I felt it was necessary to at least read it into the record. Okay, moving along next, we have our energy manager update. Mr. Philbin is joining us this evening. He has an overview of 2021 activities for us to review, as well as a discussion about electric vehicle charging stations. I think this is one of John's important points, if I remember, John, wasn't it?
Yeah, like when I said earlier that I'm not going anywhere, it was in reference to this.
Good evening, everyone. Again, as you just indicated, I want to present a little bit of an overview of what we did in the last year, some of the good news and bad news, and then go over the proposal for getting started on electrical vehicle infrastructure improvements in the town so that we have some charging stations. First off, our phase one solar which has been already installed on several of the schools, just for information purposes, generated $92,000 in incentives that offset electric bills in the schools. So that was phase one. Phase two that we're trying to get going would probably generate a similar amount. The problem we're having with phase two is that we need what we call an anchor project, something of significant size in excess of 1 megawatt to 1.5 megawatts. And we were thinking about doing it on the parking lot at the Meditech facility. Meditech everybody has said yes there, with the exception of the board. And there are members of the board, or at least one member of their board, who's having thoughts about the canopies potentially affecting the saleability of their property should they anytime in the future choose to sell. They have no plans at the moment, but he was concerned that it might affect it in the future. In fact, in other cases, it's just the opposite. It has enhanced it, but in any event, he's not convinced yet, and we're still working on him. And in the meanwhile, we're also working very hard trying to find an alternative to that particular location as best we can. So we're looking at other possibilities within the town itself. A second item is the DOE grant, DOER grant. For the first time in 7 years, we weren't successful. We did not get one. The reason was that we won 7 years in a row. They said frankly that they reduced the amount that I could apply for, and they said that they were spreading the wealth. And the system that we were trying to put in at the library, they also said was very complex, and a lot of them didn't understand it. It's just recently been endorsed by NREL and by the federal government, but at the time when this was applied, of course, it was very new and it was expensive. And as a result, we chose now to go ahead with the chiller by itself and not try to put this air cleaning system on top of the chiller. So we applied for a grant to do that, but we didn't get it. The other good news we did is back in February, March, we were trying to decide when we should sign the new contract for supply and how long we should go out. And in a lot of interactions with Chris Coleman and myself, we decided in May that things did not look good for the future in terms of pricing of electric. So we chose to sign for a 5-year supply contract in May. And the 5 years would run from January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2026, which is the longest one you could get. And it turned out that we called it right. It's about 25% higher now. And the savings going forward for the next 5 years are at least another $22,000 a year off the electric bill that we otherwise we would have had to have paid. But what this does tell us is that on January 1st of 2027, we can expect a huge increase in utility costs. And it's, in my opinion, what we need to do is, in the meanwhile, do as much conservation as we can throughout the town, so we bring down our carbon footprint and the amount we use. And secondarily, wherever we can, increase the solar and whatever else we can get by way of incentives. There are other alternatives now, things like battery locations and so forth, where you can get incentives and build up a body of those incentives so that when the shock comes on January 2027, we're pretty much prepared for the financial impact that's going to have on the town. We have a lot of other projects that we completed. We completed a lot of work at the senior center, the new windows, air handler, air conditioning. In Thurston, there's all new unit ventilators. The pool has a new LED lighting at one end, and the town hall has a whole new HVAC system on the top floor. And now we're working on the library chiller, as I mentioned briefly, and some insulation in the roof of the senior center, and a new heating system for the lower half of the town hall, which is going to take a lot of creativity to come up with something given the age of the building. We also, and one of the wings in Thurston, the HVAC system is gone pretty much, or failing, and we're going to have to replace that. And then we're doing a study in conjunction with the University of Massachusetts and the Mass DEP, looking at the carbon footprint of the town and keeping track of what we're doing and looking at where the most carbon effective places are in the town in terms of doing reductions. So this study is underway now, and we're essentially in a data collection phase. And then we're going to do another application in the next few weeks for a grant to do some lighting at the Thurston. And then again, as you just heard a few moments ago, the electric aggregation program, the CEA for Westwood, that should be kicked off this year. And hopefully a lot of the questions and on the cost of power and the way it's gone up astronomically and the way it's going to go up even more is going to complicate that program. And it again points out why we were lucky to have gotten ours signed up for 5 years and locked in a price for a lot of years going forward. Which brings us to the electrical vehicle charging. As everybody knows, electric vehicles are being pushed by the federal, by the state, by everybody. It's becoming more and more of a fact of life. If some of the governors have their way, you know, we'll all have to have them by sometime in the mid 2030s. You know, they can argue about the practicality of that, but anyway, that's the ideal that some of the people are pushing. In any event, before any of that could ever happen, there has to be some infrastructure built so that people can readily charge their vehicles in parking lots and in stations and so forth. You'll probably start to see these chargers now. If you go out to the Natick Mall, they have them in there, and a lot of the supermarkets are putting them in. But there are two programs that are underway that we've applied to both programs, and we're successful in both programs that will help us get through the initial costs of doing this. One is the so-called Make Ready program that's sponsored by Eversource, where they will come in and pay 100% of the cost of doing infrastructure upgrades to make the location that you're picking suitable, especially for high speed and for example, the high speed chargers where you charge in a matter of hours as opposed to some of the level 2, as they call them, which takes sometimes 8 hours or so to get a real good charge. But the high speed ones, we're looking to put several of those in. And we applied and we were selected. And we've already, the police station was sort of the first location where we would put it, which actually could service both the police station and the town hall because of the way the parking lot would be. We were going to put in 4 stations with 8 ports. So essentially 8 electric cars could be charged. We may initially do only the first 2, depending on costs and how it all falls out. And then the second grant that we were told we got through a press release, believe it or not, I called and asked, you know, where are the details? They said you'll have the details in a few weeks, but it looks as though we've been selected to be get an award for paying for the equipment. So we should be able to do it in at least 2 or 3 locations with no cost to the town, and high speed in at least 2 of the locations. The high speed is more complex because the high voltage, the 480 voltage that's required, there has to be a secondary transformer installed, and that might rule out the library, but the police station and the high school are 2 ideal locations for that kind of a facility. At the high school, there's a large transformer there that's fairly shielded and would go across, and you would put a series of chargers at the one end of the faculty parking lot. And then in the case of the police station, it would be the 4 parking slots that are in the front of the building as you face the building on the right side in the front of the park. So those are the 2 locations initially. They've already done a survey of the police station. They've already have laid out how the wires would be run, where they would put the transformer. So all of the planning and site inspections and everything have been done, and the police station is very feasible for having this done, as is the high school. So what I'm asking for tonight, we have to get as soon as we can a letter of intent into Eversource that we intend to go forward with the police station first, and then whatever other ones get approved. There'll be other letters of intent that may come down the road. So I need a resolution, which we're proposing here, that the select board empower Chris Coleman to sign the letter of intent to authorize the beginning of this process, where we would start to put some of these electrical chargers and do the infrastructure work at various locations throughout the town. The 4 that are proposed initially would be the police station, the library, the council on aging, and the high school. And then there's already one that's going in at the library annex. That already has been essentially the plumbing and the wiring and so forth is all in place. So that's just a matter of popping the server there. That's a very simple one and probably can be done within the budget of the library already. So that's what we're looking for tonight. We're looking for, again, the proposed action is that the select board authorize Chris to begin and sign this letter of intent so that we can get going on this infrastructure improvements. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Pat, maybe you know, Chris, I don't know. One thing that seems to jump out at me is, do we even have the authority to put it at Westwood High School without a vote from the?
Yes, we've already discussed it with Emily. We've already gone over it with, so I don't know, do we need other approvals? We've discussed it with Ken Arias was involved and actually involved in the site selection, the location.
Tom,
I mean, I don't support it either way. I don't think we should be inviting members of the public 24/7 onto the high school property.
Tom, has the school committee discussed this at a public meeting?
No,
Well, I would feel much better would the school committee ratify with a vote, a majority vote of the school committee that they want those on school property.
all right, the school ones, of course, will take another letter of intent and we'll take another visit. So it's appropriate that we could easily put it off until we have what you suggest and maybe have it discussed more fully at the high school, one of their meetings.
But the police station, you're fully prepared to go ahead with?
We're prepared to go ahead initially with the police station.
Okay.
That's the major one.
And Chief Silver, I see you're here as well, and I assume that you're here and you're in favor of this as well?
Yes, sir. Yes, very excited at the prospect of making that available not only to the public, but making it available for vehicles for use in the town, particularly in light of the rising fuel costs. But we've been trying to work with Tom to pursue this for some time.
Okay. So then, since we're only getting enough money, I think, to do one pretty much start to finish, why don't we just reduce it just to the police station at this point in time, and see what kind of, what kind of interest it gets, I guess, if nothing else, to see how many people are really using it. The Chief, you also have some electric vehicles coming, correct?
Yes, sir. So we have one electric vehicle on order. We have other vehicles already for some time now that are gas electric hybrid, but we have one fully electric vehicle on order. Yes.
Okay.
I would also mention that we've already, at no cost to the town, had added to the infrastructure at the annex. If you go over there, you'll see the pipe coming out of the ground. So we don't need any authorization but our own to do that. I mean, the construction cost and all of that has been done. And to buy a charger over there would be a fairly simple one. It would be a single, something similar to what we have over at the account of the DPW. And it would be one that would charge 2 cars and would be there for people who come to the library, and it would be in the disabled parking area of that library.
Okay. So the Westwood Police Station and the Wentworth Hall.
Right.
Okay.
Why? I'm sorry. Why can't the police station one be behind the building?
I think it had to, I'm not sure exactly now. I'll have to go back and check the reasons. But I think we wanted it in the front for some reason.
I mean, I think what's just kind of concerning is, like, we built this brand new building, we sell it to the community. There's residential homes that abut that, and we're now going to put these structures out front. I mean, the building is 5 years old, and we're completely changing it. I really am disappointed. There's always this, like, who cares about what things look like? You continue to push the senior center, which I'm just, again, horrified, and I will continue to advocate against it, whether I'm on the board or not. The fact that we would destroy a historical street is just alarming. So I don't, this is all great, but we don't take into any consideration what the taxpayers have paid for and what we're now going to force them to look at.
Canopies, John, this is just a charger. You've seen them.
But why can't it go out back? Put it out back.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we can look at we can easily look at that, doing that, because they have a lot of work to do with, in terms of transformer. There is a transformer, and I don't think Jeff, the reason now I recall, the reason was it was out front is because of part of the requirements of the grant, where the $100,000 comes in of free equipment, is that it be accessible to the public. And I don't think we could have the public pulling into the back of the police station in their areas.
Correct. If we did have a conversation about that, as you know, Tom wrote the grant, not me, but there was never a conversation as it relates to having the public come back there, because that's where all the vehicles are, and the exit and entrance to the prisoner sally port, and the vehicles with the equipment, and the employee entrances and so forth, and employee personal vehicles. So we just didn't have the conversation further than that. And then the conversation went to the front of the building, and I didn't have an objection to it. But I never had any further conversation about location preference. It's just that's how the issue were framed, and that's where it landed as it related to my part in it.
I mean, we're potentially buying a budding property to the back of the police station. Why can't we put it there? It'll be off a public road.
We could probably change the location. I don't think that that's the big deal was to find a location for the transformer, which we did. And then running, you know, they Eversource, when they do this, they have to restore everything that disturbed. So if they have to dig a trench, whatever they do, they have to regrade it and everything else and that's all of their cost. So they come up with a cost estimate, and they found the one in the front that's acceptable, although that's, you know, not easy either, because they come up the driveway and then they have to go across and then build it up. But I can easily call and check to see if there's any problem. Where would you propose that to be, John?
I'm just thinking, yeah, somewhere in the American Legion parking lot.
Chris, did you have your hand raised?
I mean, I think we have to keep in mind, people from all over the country who are traversing any road near us will find this location on their phone, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, it seems a little unfair to me that, you know, we've preserved Town Hall because of its, you know, historic aesthetics. We spent a lot of money, well spent money, on a new police station. And then we'll just put this infrastructure, and we don't know, God knows, who's going to be there 24 hours a day and forcing the neighbors to deal with that. I just don't think there's been any thought on the impact to this community.
Chris?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you to Tom for all his work. I mean, Tom's work has really made us the envy of many surrounding communities with his energy conservation, his forward thinking, and really looking to do the best for Westwood. In this particular case, the one thing I would just defer to town council is I don't believe I can sign a document for the Legion building now if the town has taken ownership of it. So I would just share that with the board. Again, defer to town council from the legality of that, but that would be the one concern. But as far as other areas on town property, either behind town hall or the police station, we can certainly work with the chief and Tom on that to look at something that the board can consider later.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I actually disagree with John on this one. I'm actually supportive of this simply because I think it's a good statement piece in support of where we need to evolve to. So I understand the concern about people finding it, but as you said, they're going to find it, whether it's behind the building or in front of the building. And I actually think that makes a statement that the town is evolving and trying to do its, you know, best to move in the direction that we need to move.
So I'm actually in the middle. How's that? So I think the police station is okay, and I think that Wentworth Hall is okay. For now, I would hold off on the others. And I'll tell you why, because I think if anyone's going to make noise in front of the police station, it's not going to last very long before someone comes out to take care of that. And second of all, I think that is the Wentworth Library that was discussed from the beginning to put one in, and people are in there while, you know, in the library, they're charging their car. So I think those are probably the two best locations to start with, and we'll see how things progress and whether or not more are actually required. So I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't think we should go to the Council on Aging or Westwood Main Library yet, or even the high school without the school committees. But I think to get started and to take steps in the right direction. I think, putting 2 locations in is not gonna take away from the decor, if you will, or from the character of the town. I think it's showing that Westwood is continuing to be somewhat stepping in the right direction for the future. So, John, I assume you won't make the motion. Do you want Rob?
I'll defer to Rob.
Okay, Rob.
Okay, and I will modify the current proposed action. I'd like to make a motion for the select board to approve the plan for the electric vehicle charging stations at the police station and at Wentworth Hall, and to authorize town administrator to sign a letter of intent with allowing Eversource to build the electrical vehicle infrastructure at the police station and Wentworth Hall once letters of intent are received.
Okay, and I will second that out of necessity. Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
Mr. Hickey,
Opposed.
and I vote aye. 2-1, thank you. So Tom, you'll get a good start, and I like the fact that it's no cost to the town. Anytime you have no cost, we definitely like to hear those words added to any proposal, so thank you very much. Okay, moving along. I know that Chris and Jeff are ready to, well, I won't even say it. I'm not gonna use a bad pun right now. I was gonna say, want to get this over with, so yes. I understand that you conducted a hearing for a dog hearing on January 26, 2022, of which we have seen, I believe, all of the evidence that was submitted through our package and through hand deliveries because of some of the nature of some of the things in the package. And so, who would like to take the lead? I assume, Chief Silva, you'd like to take the lead on this?
I certainly can, if the town administrator would like me to do that. He acted as the hearing officer and I presented the case. So the case was presented before us regarding resident, one of our younger residents, in the interest of trying to maintain some degree of anonymity and privacy, that was knocked down and injured by a dog. We received a timely report of that through the animal control officer to the police officer. All parties involved, including some witnesses that the hearing officer deemed to have relevant or potentially relevant testimony, were allowed to speak. The hearing was held in the community room on the first floor of the police station. Mr. Coleman was present, town council was present, myself. The police reports and reports from the veterinarian were submitted as self-authenticating documents. Mr. Coleman heard all the testimony and made a recommendation based on that. Certainly, I presented the case, and so I agree that it was the appropriate forum, and I attest to the facts that Mr. Coleman based his decision on. So I'm in support of the recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions if any of the board members have specific questions about that, or anybody else, I guess, for that matter.
Okay, so the recommendation is to find that the dog is a dangerous dog and that actually did bite a child on June 26th of 2021, right? And that was due process allowed at the hearing, all parties were allowed to participate. And that the dangerous dog, the requirements for a dangerous dog are that, one, it was without justification and attacks a person or a domestic animal, causing physical injury or death, and behaves in a manner that a reasonable person would believe poses an unjustified imminent threat of physical injury. Do we know what type of dog the dog actually is?
We do. I don't have the report in front of me, but that it was listed on the information.
Yeah, okay. And so the recommendations are that the dog be humanely restrained and it would be chained or tethered all the time. That it would be removed from keeping the dog and shall securely and humanely muzzled or restrained with a chain not longer than 3 feet and not with less strength than 300 pounds. That there be a homeowner's or apartment insurance with $100,000 in coverage, and and that the dog be provided a licensing authority identified in order, and be registered with the town at all times, right? And if the owner is aggrieved, they can appeal this to Dedham District Court as well within 10 days of the order, once the order is signed and issued.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Michael, if my recollection is right, I think it was a boxer.
Yeah, it didn't look like a complete boxer, that's why I thought there must be another. I know it's listed as a doctor, as a boxer, but I think, history would tell me that it's a mix as opposed to just a purebred, but I could be wrong. Okay. We've all had a chance to look. Any questions that you have for the chief or for Chris before we take a vote? Okay,
Mr. Chairman, this is a public hearing.
okay, and let's see if there are any comments or questions. We had, only comment so far is Jan and Claire Gatkowski thanking us for approving the EV chargers. You're welcome. But we do not see any open questions at this point in time. Or any comments. Anyone wishes to be heard, you'd have to type your name and your address in, and then your question. Seeing we have none, we'll give it just a couple more seconds. I don't see anyone typing at all either, so that's,
Okay, I move that the board approve the hearing officer recommendation and decision of the public dog hearing that was held on January 26, 2022, and to incorporate a copy of the decision into the April 11, 2022 minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And before I vote aye as well, I just want to say this, that I did get a chance to look at the videos, and any dog, and I can tell you my secretary herself was bitten, her husband was bitten by a dog that they had for 10 years. You never know when it's going to happen. It just happens. So I will vote as well. It is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman, for conducting the
Thanks,
hearing.
Jeff.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moving along to a new business. We have the Police Superior Officers Association, and we have a memorandum of agreement between the town and the Westwood Police Superiors Association. So it includes a 2.5% COLA and an increase in the detail rate for the police superiors. And so any question or discussion? Nope.
I move that the board sign a memorandum of agreement between the town of Westwood and the Westwood Police Superiors Association for fiscal year 2023.
Second.
Hey, Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay, next along, we have Lifeworks lease authorization to sign. So this is for the select board to review a long-term lease with Lifeworks for the property located at 15 Clapboard Tree Street, excuse me. On the May 3rd, 2021 meeting, annual town meeting, the town unanimously approved Article 16 to accept municipal ownership of the portion of the former Westwood Lodge property and to authorize a long-term lease with Lifeworks. The lease will be
Mr.
for a
Chairman,
period
if I
of...
may.
Yes, you may.
Tish, would you please let Dan Burke, who's the CEO of Lifeworks, in, along with his counsel, Mike Paolino, from the town of Walpole, I believe.
I'm actually in, Pat.
Dan's in. I don't show Michael here.
He was on earlier, I saw.
Yeah, he's not on.
Okay. Mr. Burke, nice to see you, sir.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you to everybody for having me as a guest. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Burke. So we were just talking about Article 16 that happened at town meeting, was to accept municipal ownership of a portion of the former Westwood Lodge, Lot 1, and to authorize a long-term lease of said property for construction and operation of a 5-unit group home for persons with disabilities. So we have had a chance to review the lease. It was in our packet. And of course, they remind us of our own decisions, which is always nice to know what we did in the past. And so based on that, I don't have any problems. I know it's been reviewed by council, and this will preserve those 5 on the shared housing inventory for a long time, so.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, there's two other people I'd like to acknowledge, besides Mr. Burke and his counsel, Mr. Paolino, who were very good to work with, but Nora Nora and our former town planner, Abby, were also instrumental in working this agreement out. And we believe it's beneficial to both parties.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And I know Nora's still listening. Thank you, Nora, and to Abby, who has moved on to another town. But anyway, okay. Any discussion?
No, I move the board authorize the town administrator, Christopher Coleman, to sign the lease with Lifeworks Incorporated for the property located at 15 Clapboard Tree Street.
And I will second that.
Okay, Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dan Burke. I just, on behalf of Lifers, I just take 1 second. Thank Mr. Hearn and Nora and folks in the town have been wonderful. All of you, it has been a dream for this folks to live there, and we greatly appreciate it. We love our working relationship with the town of Westwood, and we're very grateful for all of this taking place, and especially for the 5 people and their families who love every day being in that neighborhood.
Excellent. That's great news to hear, and you can come and say that anytime. We'd like to hear that.
Well, we'd love to, as COVID lets up, we're still waiting for an open house. We're in year 3 and we're still waiting for a open house to invite everybody over. But every time we go to have one, there's some new variant. So we're looking forward to an open house when we can safely do it.
Mr. Burke, I'll be in contact with you to arrange for the lease to be signed.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr. Hearn. I appreciate it.
It's going to have to be this week.
I'm in all week.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right. Glad we're able to straighten that out on live here. Perfect. Okay. Moving along, we have the old business. We have the Poet Laureate Selection Committee. And so we are here to review the parameters of the Poet Laureate Selection Committee. Just to give you a little background, on February 28th of 2022, the Select Board voted to approve positions for a Poet Laureate and a Teen Poet Laureate, and for the appointment of a Poet Laureate Selection Committee. So, on February 28th, we had a motion to approve a Poet Laureate position and a Teen Poet Laureate position for the town and the library director. And so, at this point in time, it appears that the motion from the Select Board would be recommending and appointing members to the Poet Laureate Selection Committee. After discussion and for clarification, it is being recommended that the Poet Laureate Selection Committee be created and appointed by the library director. The committee was tasked with guidelines, create an application, and choose the poet and the teen poet laureates. The library director and the Poet Laureate Committee will then present candidates to the Select Board to officially appoint them to their positions. So, we're being asked to clarify our motion, Mr. Hickey.
Okay, so for the proposed actions for the Select Board to clarify the motion approved on February 28th, 2022, to read as follows. On February 28th, 2022, the Select Board approved a Poet Laureate position and Teen Poet Laureate position for the town. The library director will be tasked to create and appoint the Poet Laureate Selection Committee, and such committee will recommend the Poet Laureate and Teen Poet Laureate candidate for appointments by the Select Board.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, hope that clarification is good. Now, the last thing that we have on our agenda this evening before heading into executive session is we have approval of regular minutes for both the March 29th and the April 1st, 2022 meetings. Get these done before Mr. Hickey leaves us, so we need to get these minutes approved.
I move approval of the March 29, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second that.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well.
I move approval of the April 1st, 2022 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Mr. Hickey.
Aye.
Mr. Gotti.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Okay, so let me just find my script to head into executive session, which is okay. There we go. Okay. That's all the business we have before us this evening. We are going into executive session. The Select Board will be going to executive session to discuss 4 issues. The first, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to discuss strategy with respect to contract negotiations for a non-union personnel. The second and third, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for union personnel. And the fourth reason, pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 22, FG, to comply with any general law for review of executive session minutes, all of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if it were discussed in open session. This board will not be returning to open session this evening. So I have a motion to go into executive session.
I move that the board go into executive session for the aforementioned reasons.
Second.
Okay. And the last time I was able to say this, Mr. Hickey,
Aye.
Mr. Gotti,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. We're going to executive session. Our next meeting, let's see,
For town meeting.
just before
Town meeting, yeah.
if so needed on May 2nd. If not, then we will see you at town meeting. Please remember to get out and vote on April 26th and be at town meeting on May 2nd. Thank you very much. We'll go into executive session and we'll see you again real soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.